Folks, today we want to talk about why to lime your food plots. Okay, we're going to talk about pH. Why is pH important? Why does people have food plot failures? Now today, like I said, we talk so much about soil samples, but a lot of people skip that most important step, and it's the first step you should take. Even if you're new to it or if you've been plotting for years, that's something you should be doing. It's important for your root growth and things. You have to have a certain balance in your soil. Everything starts with your soil. You need that proper balance. If you don't have good balance to your soil, and what is going to happen, you are going to have lower nutrient value to your plants, and it'll be less palatable. You've heard folks say that I plant this stuff and everything seemed optimal and the animals just are not eating it. A lot of times it's low fertilization or not the right pH, and it's just not what the deer desire. Okay, so a few things to talk about. Okay, when we talk about liming your plots, you are going to get a recommendation back from a soil sample, and it's important to get this soil test done so that you know what you need to add back to your soil. Even if, and especially if you're a first timer, you don't even know what you need to put into the soil to amend it so that you can get started. So that's why it's so important to do this. Once you get the recommendations back, you take the samples, you send them in. Within about a week or so, they get back to you with their recommendations. And why it's important to think about this now, you're asking? Well, it's been proven that pelletized lime, which is usually what the average guy's using in his plot, like you or myself, it's easily accessible. It is more expensive to buy by the bag than to get ag lime delivered and spread, but like I said, it's the easiest for us to be doing. The effects of the lime is once you add it, you spread it, it takes about 6 months for pelletized lime to break down and to be totally usable to your plants. Now you're saying, oh well, I never did this before, I'm thinking about planting something in the spring. And if you're foregoing a soil sample, which is not smart, but if you do that, you can still add the lime at planting, but it's not going to be optimal. But it's better than not having any at all. Get it on the ground at planting, and it will feed the plot over the next 6 months, and your fall plot would be ready by then if you do this in the spring. So something to think about there. Let's look and see what you're going to get when you get a soil sample. I personally go to my local co-op and I get a Penn State soil sample kit, and it's a bag that comes. It's like foil lined. It'll be self-sealing, but internally to the bag is another bag, and you get, it's basically a Ziploc baggie, and there is actually a line on here, if you could see that, and that's the fill line. Approximately 1 cup of soil needs to be put in this bag for testing, and then you seal it back up and you put it back in this foil lined bag for mailing. But inside the test is your paperwork, and according to what you're trying to plant, you'll have different pages to fill out. Me being food plots and that type of thing, page 2 is always usable for myself. You fill out the information for Penn State to be able to mail back to you your sample results, but it's going to ask you your depth of plow, what you want to plant, and your yield expectations and things. Pretty generic type stuff, so I mean even first time people You know, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can do that, so it's not a big deal. But like as I said, you take a couple shovelfuls of dirt, throw in a bucket, mix it up real good, and you're going to take a couple shovels full of that till it fills up that 1 cup line in that Ziploc baggie, and you stick it in this envelope. Now like I said, what you end up doing is you go to the post office and they'll weigh it, you put it in a shipping box container, and off it goes, you pay. But one thing I wanted to tell you about was when you're taking these samples, if you have a broad range of area, what you want to do is you want to jump around and take a few different shovelfuls from different areas on your plot. If you're in a hillside type area or sloping land, you want to take your samples at the top of the hillside, because a lot of your nutrients and everything leaches towards the bottom of the hill. Does that make sense? It all will flow downhill. I know you've heard that before, but your most needed areas will be at the top of those hills. What you will get back in the mail, it'll look like this. It's going to show you your N, P, and K and your lime requirements, and there will be recommendations on how much poundage per acre of fertilization and lime that will be needed to amend your soil. Now, in addition to the bottom of that paperwork that you fill out and send, there's other tests that you can order and pay extra for upon sending it away with a check included in your envelope. But one of the things you may want to get tested extra, and I think it's $5 through Penn State's, is get your organic matter tested. And what that's going to do for you, if you know your organic matter in your soil, organic matter helps hold the nutrients and your fertilizer from washing away. And if you don't have enough organic matter, you may not want to be going out and taking that whole recommendation of your fertilizer and dumping it all in your fields now, and then washes all away and it's not usable. You may want to make a split application. You may want to fertilize half now, half later, or portions of. We like to amend at least 3/4 of our recommendations, and then we use a product called Antler Grow, which is micronutrition. It's sprayable. They also have a product called Farmer's Touch. It is N, P, and K liquefied to be able to spray on, and that'll also help cut down on your fertilization costs, because buying by the bag is very expensive. You can get these products to foiler feed, and it'll go a lot further for you. So that's an option also. As I said, optimum pH is between a 6 and a 7. And what I wanted to discuss now is if you have a lower pH, for instance, what I wanted to talk about was, let's use an example of a 5.0. If you have a 5.0 pH and you plant, you are only going to get about 50% usage of all of the fertilization that you throw into the ground. That's why pH is so important, because for it to be able to be uptaked into the plants and used, you have to have that balance correct. And if you don't have the proper balance with pH, all the fertilization you're throwing on the ground is not going to be usable. As I said, like 50% is not usable or available if you have a 5.0. If you have a 5.5 pH, you're going to probably have about 30% of your fertilizer unusable. If you jump up to 6.0, which is pretty good, but it's still, could use some room for improvement. But at 6.0, you're still losing 20% of your fertilization. You know, you talk about 20, 30, 50% of fertilization unavailable, you are just throwing money away. So that's why it is so important, and people preach about getting the soil test, amending your pH, you know, getting the lime on the ground, getting it out early, getting it out so that it's available for when you want to plant. Okay. One of the other things was, just as a tip, I like to, when there's a skiff of snow, or, you know, whatever, snow time, when it's white on the ground, I like to spread my lime sometimes. I like to go out and spread it so that the contrast of the lime hitting the snow, you can see exactly what tracks you've spread. And if you missed a spot, you can easily see it. You can go back and you can crisscross and whatever you need to do to get that on where you need it. So just a little tip there. We like to do it in the snow. You know, not a bad idea. So whenever maybe let's say you planted something last year. You don't want to plant the same thing over and over and over in the same spot. You want to rotate different things, use different things, whatever, because different plants take different nutrients out of the ground. It uses different stuff. It takes it right out. So if you plant the same thing over and over and over, and it takes the same thing out of the soil over and over and over, you're going to really be lacking in a certain area. So it's good to be able to bounce around and rotate. And you know, some places say, oh, you only need a pH test, you know, soil sample every 3 years or whatever. I do them every year, just to make sure that you're optimal. And who wants to throw down money? Basically, you're throwing money in the dirt, covering it over, and praying that it works. Why? You know, you can actually figure out some of this stuff by the recommendations that you get from your soil samples. It's just smart business, folks. Why throw it away? I mean, you're talking about having that low pH of 5.0 and throwing away 50% of your fertilization. That's a lot of money. And what I've got going here is a 3-field sample. One being a clover plot that I have down below, one being here around the house. I have a ½ acre that I plant, and this being the field at my in-laws that I'm hoping to be able to plant this fall here. And I've got 3 different samples here. And why, you're asking, is it on cardboard? Well, you know, this week had been brutal. It was, you know, one day it was 70 degrees almost, and then now today it's in the 20s and snow. So I took advantage of that nicer weather, went out and dug it, but it was pretty wet. And so what I do is I come home and I dump it on cardboard and let it dry for a few days, and then I will shovel it into the appropriate baggies. And that's what I'm about to do here now. Now I've labeled each baggie with a Sharpie, so I know where each one is coming from and where it corresponds to which envelope that I put it in, because they all have a serial number on here on the baggie and a serial number on the envelope. And like I said before, I mix this dirt up, and then you shovel it into the baggie and take it up to the line on the front of the bag at least. We need at least that much in the bag here. I usually try to give them a little extra, that way there's no question about what's happening. Okay, so like I said before, the reason I put it on cardboard is to let it dry out some, because you're going to be taking this to the post office and mailing it, and if it's all wet and moist, you're paying extra. So there you have it. It's as simple as that. You go out and dig it, I dry it, come home and put it in your bag, and then you fill out the appropriate paperwork, put it in your envelope, take it to the post office, and you mail it. I hope this was a informative video for you. I hope that you have maybe seen the light about the soil tests, how important they are. And if you thought it was interesting, give it a thumbs up. And if there's anything you think I forgot, how about giving me a comment below and tell me how you do things and why you do it. And don't forget to subscribe and follow along. We'll catch you on the next one. See ya.